Maryland legalized medical cannabis in 2013. That's when the bill was passed. It was enacted and became a law in 2014. In that bill, they detailed the application process, when it would happen, by when it had to happen, all the different components of the application, all that good stuff. So I was able to read that bill in advance of the application actually dropping, and then realize, okay, these are all the different components that I need to get together. So then when the application does go live, I already have it. Now, fast forward, I realize that that's the only way that you can actually be competitive in these processes, because
preparation.
You have to prepare. I mean, there's no way, because oftentimes the application will drop and then it'll be due between 30 and 90 days.
What's up, ShineHard family? Welcome to another Season 7 episode of ShineHard Conversations, where we sit down with thought leaders, influencers to unify and mobilize the next generation of young Black wealth builders. Today, I'm very, very excited to have a special guest, someone who is really pioneering in an underrepresented space, Miss Hope Wiseman. She is the co-founder of Marion, Maine, and she is the youngest Black woman dispensary owner in the United States, breaking hella barriers in the cannabis space. Hope, happy that you're here. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you. Thank you for bringing me on this platform. It's different than what I normally get to talk about, so I'm excited to be able to share a new perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And, we have a course that just came out called the Legacy Accelerator. It's an 8-week course where we help Black Americans discover the wealth that they already possess. And we go through 8 different forms of wealth. And when I bring guests onto the show, I always think about how those guests align with those modules. And 3 of the modules that I think are very aligned with you are health as one form of wealth, entrepreneurship, and information. Because as Black Americans, we're not very in touch or educated on our rights as citizens. And so I think sometimes we get intimidated, we get tricked, and we end up in a system that is not really beneficiary to us, is not built for us to succeed. And so part of information is like, how do we stay out of the system, right?
Yep.
So I think that you're gonna bring so much value today. And if you're ready, Hope, it is time to shine. There's many reasons why people want to create generational wealth. And I read your mission, and you started your business to help kind of create generational wealth. And so some people want to do that because they come from generational wealth and they want to continue it. And some people want to do that because they never had it and they want to change that trajectory of their family. What was growing up like for you?
Yeah, so I was raised in a true middle-class family, 2-parent household. Both parents worked very hard. My mother is an entrepreneur, and she started her dental practice the year I was born, actually. So there are pictures of me in a stroller right next to her chair, and she's working on people. So I've seen hard work from day one. I wouldn't call us wealthy. We, like I said, true middle-class household. I had everything I needed. And I tell people all the time, I had a really good childhood, but my mom was sure to instill in me the idea that there is more, and that she took it from where her mom took her. And same with my dad. Both of my parents were raised probably lesser than I had, but they made sure to provide us with a better life and then instill in us that we're supposed to keep that trajectory going. So I was definitely raised to be free thinking and open-minded to new ideas. I was also raised to look for opportunities to build wealth, and I was definitely raised with an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah.
So
were you all having conversations about money at the dinner table?
Maybe not at the dinner table. So another thing about my family is we weren't super traditional. So we didn't do things. I kind of joke, like some of my best friends, we like have known each other since we were little kids. We were like, wow, we really ate fast food like every night. It's just because when you have working parents that go all day, the mom and the dad in the household, sometimes it becomes difficult. So definitely wasn't eating like traditional dinner with my family and all of that stuff all the time. But especially my mother, we spent a lot of time together. I used to travel a lot as a kid, doing competitive dance and pageants. So I was spending a lot of time with my mom on the road, and she would definitely talk to me about money and taxes. And so I did understand a lot of those things at an early age versus a lot of my peers, for sure.
That's incredible. Yeah, like for me, I totally was non-traditional. I was the only child raised by my grandmother for the most part, kind of bounced around between parents. So I didn't really have a very good concept of money. And my grandmother was on a fixed income. So she always like verbalized like our money is limited.
Right.
And that started to like stick in my head. And it's kind of crazy because I never had self-limiting beliefs about myself, but I felt like money was limited. Right?
So that I can relate to that, because both of my parents, because they knew they worked hard, but they definitely had put themselves, I believe, like in a box. They felt like they kind of did everything that they could at a point. I think my mom has exited that mindset now that we're on this entrepreneurial journey together. And I think she thinks differently. But me growing up, I definitely had a lot of, okay, we can't afford that, but we can't afford this. Like kind of like stay over here. Like don't try and go over there. We're not over there. So but for me, that was like, I was like, oh, I want to be able to do anything I want whenever I want to. It was motivating for me.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I never subscribed to that. And me growing up in Petersburg, Virginia, it was like, even at a young age, 9 years old, I'm like, I don't belong here. Like I could feel like this isn't home for me. Like I gotta get this somewhere else. I don't know where it is, but I'm gonna get there and there's gonna be more. And I think that I follow my heart, follow my passion and my spirit, and it led me to a better place, which is now Washington, D.C. But were you born and raised in D.C. or were you in Maryland?
I was born and raised in PG County, Maryland.
Okay.
I was actually born in Fairfax, Virginia. Funny story. My dad was a hospital administrator there, and they just opened their new wing to deliver babies, and I was like the second baby delivered in it.
Really? So your dad was one of the doctors who delivered you?
No, he's a hospital administrator. He was he worked for the logistics department.
And thinking about parenthood, it's so cool that you and your mother are now co-founders of Marion, Maine. So like, was that something that you all always had, like that synergy in business, or was it just like a decision that we decided to pull our funds for the family and do it that way?
A little bit of both. So definitely, like I said, I was, the year I was born, she started her first business. So I've always been with her as she's taken risks and tried new things. I've watched her try all different types of things growing up. And the two things that stuck for her were, of course, her dental practice, which she still owns now. She does not practice anymore, but she still has the office and has a few dentists in it, and then real estate. But I've seen her try a bunch of other things in the meantime. And, I've just been like really inspired by how hard she works and how smart she is and how she's able to figure things out, and I feel like I've taken on a lot of her same qualities. And she's really been able to help me sophisticate the way that I think about business. And so even with going to her with this, like, no, it wasn't like we had always dreamed of doing this. Some people say that, they're like, how long did you want to, be in the cannabis industry? I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Well, it's kind of a new thing, right? An opportunity to be in this space.
So I definitely was inspired by her entrepreneurial spirit. So when I saw this opportunity, I realized that it'd be one of the biggest emerging industries of my lifetime. And I just was so inspired by the fact that if I got in at the ground floor level, I could be potentially, I could be one of the major players in this space. I knew that this industry would grow to be very, very big. And we've seen constant growth since the industry became legal. And we're seeing it. I don't feel like this growth is slowing down anytime soon. So now I still believe we're like on lap 5 of 100 of this industry. So there's still a lot of opportunity and time left to get in, but we definitely seized the opportunity to get in the ground floor level in Maryland.
Yeah, I hear that it's very difficult to get the permits, and really, historically, Maryland is one of the most difficult states to start a business in, period.
Right.
What was that process like for you, getting the permits and the licenses to start Marion, Maine as a business?
Yeah. So, okay. So the cannabis industry is extremely, I used the word sophisticated earlier. So sophisticated, nuanced, it's confusing. But I think that's what makes me so excited about the industry, because it is so sophisticated and you have to really think through a structure. So that being said, every single state has their own laws around cannabis. They set up the programs completely different. There's no similarities between the two, between any state. So all that being said, Maryland went medical first, and how they normally do it is a legislative process. They write a bill that will either legalize medical cannabis or adult use cannabis. You've seen all these things happen over the past few years. Maryland legalized medical cannabis in 2013. That's when the bill was passed. It was enacted and became a law in 2014. In that bill, they detailed the application process, when it would happen, by when it had to happen, all the different components of the application, all that good stuff. So I was able to read that bill in advance of the application actually dropping, and then realize, okay, these are all the different components that I need to get together. So then when the application does go live, I already have it. Now, fast forward, I realize that that's the only way that you can actually be competitive in these processes, because
Preparation.
you have to prepare. I mean, there's no way, because oftentimes the application will drop and then it'll be due between 30 and 90 days. And there's no way you could get all of the information that you need put together in that period of time. Oftentimes you have to have control of a property. You have to have specific subject matter expertise. So you have to find these people. They want to see a full board of people that can have different expertise in different areas. You want to see people with related experience. Now, the cannabis industry is more sophisticated, so you see people with direct experience. But, back when I was applying, literally no one had ever done it in Maryland. So there weren't that many people that had experience running a cannabis dispensary, So you saw a lot of people coming from the West Coast to the East Coast applying for these licenses. A lot of the states will make it so that there's a in-state resident requirement or component to it that gives you more points. All these things are nuanced. In some states, it's a local focus. So some states will say, okay, it's legal here, like Michigan is a good state, or Massachusetts. Both of those states, it's legal at the state level for adult use and medical, but each of the local municipalities have the option to choose whether they want it there, how many, and whether they will allow for adult use or medical in their jurisdiction. So it just depends on what it is. Where in Maryland, the local municipalities have no control besides zoning. So it just really depends.
Sounds capital intensive though. Like having to have you have to have the property, your team. That's a lot of investing into infrastructure before you even do the application process.
It's a lot. So that
how much did you invest to get your business started?
Yep, that pre-application stage. So we probably spent $250,000.
Oh gosh.
pre-license. And all of that is at-risk capital. You're not getting it back, because that's you paying consultants, that's you paying for architectural drawings and 3D renderings and securing a property. Maybe you're paying rent on something, or maybe you're paying for an option of a property. Some people go as far as buying a whole property before they are even awarded a license. And these are extremely competitive processes. So you really are putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
And now too, I'll say there's more of a blueprint now than there was when I first applied for my very first license. So you probably don't have to spend that much. We wasted a lot of money on trial and error as well.
Yeah, I imagine that. I imagine as it becomes more widely adopted, that the cost of entry will decrease at least a small percentage. But when you think about fundraising, were you guys just coming out of your own savings, or did you go the bank route or find investors? What did you guys do to fundraise? Because I'm thinking about the listeners who are wanting, like, I want to get into this industry, but I don't have $250,000. So what do I do?
So like I said, one, you don't have to spend that much really to go through an application stage. I'd say like a good budget at this point, especially if you have someone guiding you, someone like me, or, somebody that has been through it before, I'd say between 50 and 75,000 to go through a process. And also there are a lot of people like myself who are advocating to different legislators to remove requirements that are very capital intensive, like requiring a property be under contract or have control over property before. That's unnecessary. Really, like you could wait until after a license is awarded, and at that point it makes more sense to invest, so much money. So we are changing that. But I'd say, so for us, what we did, my mother and I kind of put together a budget. And once we realized, okay, we can't do this alone, we have a third founder, Dr. Larry Bryant, and he is an oral surgeon in Maryland. He and my mother had worked closely together the whole time. So he's known me since I was a baby. So it's really still like keeping it in the family. And the three of us bootstrapped it from that point. Granted, I was straight out of college, so I had a little bit of money saved. I thought I was doing something. I think we paid like one lawyer bill.
That was going like that.
Yeah, that was my money. So I was like, well, I guess I need some help. So I am fortunate in that aspect. And I tell people all the time that my mother and Dr. Bryant lifted me up and put me on their shoulders so that I could carry out a vision. And, now we've been able to build so much value in our business, and I'm really amazed at what we've done from scratch.
Absolutely. No, it's incredible. I mean, I've been seeing your face and hearing the name of your business for years now. And so I'm glad that we can finally connect, and we've been connected obviously for this time. But also thinking about application process, I know that a lot of states are now legalizing marijuana, and there's like different types of grants and things that are earmarked, right, for underrepresented, marginalized. Maybe I should ask, is there money that's earmarked for certain demographics to get into this industry?
So like I was saying earlier, every state is different. They have all different programs, right? So there's a big emphasis and a huge push on social equity within this space. That's what they're calling it.
Because it's been criminalized, right? And so many millions of Black people.
It was disproportionately criminalized. So they targeted Black and brown communities and used cannabis as a means to do it. So they locked up people for having one joint and knowing that they wouldn't be able to pay cash bail, and had them sitting in prisons for months. And you disenfranchise families doing that. You take the head of the household out of the family, what happens? So it's happened to our community for the past 80 years. And now that it's becoming legal, there's a huge push from advocates that no, not this industry. All these other industries, you've left out Black people. You told us we couldn't do it. We're already behind because of all this systemic racism that has been implanted in our country, but not in this industry, not this time. So that being said, there's a huge push like on the federal level, when you talk about legalization, a lot of the bills that you hear about that are being presented at the federal level, advocates will fight to kill them because they're like, look, if there's not an emphasis on social equity and criminal justice reform and health equity in these bills, we don't care what it is. We don't want legalization. Because at the end of the day, the legacy market, as I like to call it, don't like to call it the black market, but for those of you who might not understand what I mean, that's what I'm talking about. The legacy market is alive and well and making billions and billions and billions of dollars. At the end of the day, whether we legalize the plant or not, it's still going to get used. So I feel like advocates, we're kind of just like, look, if it's not going to get legalized the right way, we don't want it. Because what we're not going to do is now legalize the industry and allow for the same people that were locking us up to be billionaires off of it and then keep us out of it. You know, when we built this culture, we built this industry anyway. We're the ones that perpetuated it. So yes, there are some states that, and also local municipalities that put more emphasis on social equity than others. We just heard about New York legalizing adult use cannabis, which will officially happen sometimes next year. It's been, the bill's been passed, but they still have to write the regulations and go through that process. But the regulations that are coming out now have proven to be some of the most progressive on the East Coast. They're going to have certain licenses set aside, I guess you could say, for people who fit social equity status. And also that definition changes from state to state, what social equity is and who fits that description.
Right. There's so many like subgroups now.
Yep. All these different things. I mean, because in most places, social equity means you have to be a part of a minority group and under a certain net worth, or having had some type of nonviolent cannabis related crime or charge. So that's most of the time what social equity means, but very nuanced from state to state.
In your opinion, why has it not been legal all this time?
That's a really packed answer. But I'd say the first thing is, you know, there were a lot of industries that stood to be torn down if cannabis and hemp specifically were legal back in the day. And also it was a way to target Black and Hispanic communities. At a time where, you know, this is back when Mexicans were first coming to America at high rates, right? They were smoking.
1950s and 60s, like still in the Jim Crow era.
Yep, still there. Jazz music is big, right? And a lot of jazz musicians that are kind of like our today modern rappers, they smoked weed, you know, and all the Mexicans were coming in and they were smoking it and they were calling it marijuana. We called it cannabis before, and it was found in our medicines. This was normal. Cannabis was normal before, but because, you know, they just found a way to criminalize it and make it bad. You started seeing reefer madness propaganda, and it just turned, honestly, they used that time period and the people that were most open with their use to criminalize it. And, you know, all you got to do is program people for a good 10, 15 years. And then all of a sudden it becomes a reality to them. Right. And then the Reagan era, and then that's when the
war on drugs.
Yeah. That's when it turned to actually violent. That's when it turned into, you know, more than we're just going to demonize this plant and make it seem like a bad thing. But then it became, okay, now we're locking you up and putting
it became systemic. And then it started to lead into this mass incarceration crisis and public or private prisons. And it just started this whole cycle of capitalizing off of humans. And that's a whole nother conversation.
Yep.
So one thing I've thought about too, when thinking about getting into the marijuana industry from a working perspective, what are some supply chain opportunities for people to get involved? So if I'm not going to just start a dispensary, but, you know, what else can I do in the field to support and uplift the industry?
That's a really good question. So I tell people all the time, like owning a dispensary or owning a cultivation center, touching the plant, it's not the only way to get into the space. ancillary is so important and necessary in this industry. So I mean, literally anything you could think of. I mean, the industry is a full blown industry with a lot of different sectors. We need packaging and labeling. We need the equipment that allows you to do that. We need for cultivation, all of the supplies to grow, hydroponic stores, soil, people to sell clones, the trimming supplies that we use. I mean, like literally anything you can think of, even down to professional services like marketing, accounting, lawyers, real estate agents that have expertise in cannabis. Because I'll tell you, insurance agents, me as someone who would use these vendors, it gets really difficult to use ones that don't have any experience in cannabis, because then I feel like I'm doing half of their job for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like I'm doing half of their job for them. And I have to tell them all these rules and regulations, like, oh, I can't do it that way. You know, the industry is just really nuanced. So you need people with that type of specific expertise. And really, you can charge a premium because of it. I would pay a premium if that meant that I didn't have to run down the regulations of, you know, what works in my state versus
Yeah.
California or all those things. So there's so many other ways you can support the industry. And they don't have as much red tape around them either. You know, we're subject to a lot of restrictions that businesses that don't touch the plant are not subject to. So that's another.
So how do people find out about the opportunities? Is there like a resource or a database that people can tap into?
There are quite a few out there. I'd say one of the biggest resources right now that where you can connect with people, NCIA. The National Cannabis Industry Association, that's huge. They have a lot of different opportunities, job postings, all that good stuff, and message boards, just information about the industry, all the different sectors. That's a good one. Something else I like, a media source, MJ Biz.
Okay.
MJ Biz is great for just to keep up to date with what's going on.
Yeah.
The hot thing in cannabis right now is M&A. It's a lot of M&A happening, a lot of companies consolidating.
What's M&A?
Mergers and acquisitions.
Okay.
For those that don't know. So there's a lot of companies merging together, forming multi-billion-dollar companies, which I saw that writing on the wall, which is why I wanted to get into the industry early. I knew that this industry is going to look like, I'd say in 20 years, it'll look like the airline industry or the phone industry, where there's a few major players, right? And there's a few mom and pop here and there, but it's pretty much, you know, 5 to 7 major players.
In that same vein of people finding opportunities within the supply chain, or really just becoming entrepreneurs in general, I feel like entrepreneurship is a major vehicle for wealth development within the Black community. When you go back to the days of pre-integration, when there was segregation and there was Black Wall Street and Black people had to have their own communities, their own economies, those were some of the best times for us. We were safer, we were happier, we were prosperous, and we could function independently. And I don't know if we'll ever get back to that, because we've been so integrated into mass society and we work for these companies and we have these jobs and bills that are just tying us to these companies and this way of life. But I would love to see more Black people start businesses. And so business ownership is something that we are very, very passionate about.
Yeah.
And obviously you're an entrepreneur. You know, why do you feel like ownership is important for Black Americans?
You know, ownership is important because you get to kind of write your own story. You get to, as a business owner, I get to pour back into my local community. That's huge for me. You get to have influence. You get to have a platform to really enrich. I keep going back to community. That's the biggest thing. So I believe, you know, for Black America, we have to realize we can't be upset about the way things are if we're not going to do our part to change them. And I believe that ownership is the way to do it. Me as a business owner, I have influence. I can go talk to legislators who are writing the laws that govern how we live and influence those things, because I am a stakeholder in an industry that has power right now. So I believe, the more ownership that you have, the more influence you'll be able to have, which means the more impact you'll be able to have. And we have to pour that back into our communities. We have to make spaces that are safe for us, businesses that are safe for us. A lot of my employees tell me that they've never worked in a place where they could be themselves 100%. And here I've given them that space, and that makes me feel really good. And if we had more of that, no, not everyone has to become a billionaire and, build some huge, big, amazing business. But literally, if we just build small communities, overall that momentum will gain traction, and we'll start to build safer spaces for Black people.
Absolutely. The ability to be my authentic self every single day is one of my favorite things about being an entrepreneur.
Right.
And I feel like in this society, it's an achievement to be able to get paid to be yourself. My boy Julian Mitchell says that all the time, and I'm like, man, that's such a powerful thing to do.
Yes.
And that you're able to actually provide that to those in your community is really awesome as well. How are you leveraging your business to create generational wealth?
For me, I tell people all the time, like, my lifelong dream, was definitely not to be a cannabis person. People call me like
Mogul.
a queen, cannabis mogul and all this stuff. Cannabis is the first stop on my entrepreneurial journey. So a lot of multimillionaires, billionaires, they start by creating a company and then selling it. And for me, I look at what I'm doing right now as a really unique opportunity to get into this industry super early the way that I did and really build. But I'm definitely making sure that Mary & Main leaves a legacy of being a very well-run Black company. That I want people to know that a young Black woman started that company and built a brand around Black excellence and a place of sophistication. Not that I don't love traditional cannabis culture, that urban lifestyle feel. I love that. And, I'm definitely a part of it. But Mary & Main is really bringing sophistication to the idea of a Black person owning a cannabis company. So that's part of the
Has that
legacy.
been tough as an
Yeah.
underrepresented, as a
Oh,
woman,
yeah.
as a Black person? Like, how have you navigated that conversation?
I mean, that's every day. It's not just in cannabis. Everything I do my whole life, I've had to fight those stigmas that come along with being a woman, a Black woman, and being young, and all those things together. The intersectionality of who I am has always been something that I had to be, 5 times better, faster, just to be taken seriously. So it's no different in this industry. And coming from finance and, the investment banking world, this feels like super normal. And I thrive in environments like that. However, I hope that the work that I'm doing allows for, other young women, other young Black women to not have to work 10 times harder just to be taken the same as some mediocre white man. I think that it's definitely been hard, but I mean, unfortunately, I'm conditioned for it,
Yeah,
or I guess
you're built for it.
Yeah, for
No, that's
sure.
dope. That's
For
dope.
sure.
And so you mentioned that, this is one stop on your journey to entrepreneurship, to ownership, to legacy. And at ShineHard, we really believe that passion changes everything because passion will lead you to your purpose. So when you look back at your life and the trajectory of where you want to go, what would you say is your passion and when did you know?
It's funny, I did a TEDx a few years ago and I talked about how tragedy can lead you to purpose. So for me, I don't think I really knew. I knew from a very young age that I was an influencer. I knew that people would look at things that I did and want to follow. I felt that even as a little girl. So I didn't take that lightly, and I tried to always be a really good example. I attribute a lot of that back to doing pageants, growing up young, doing pageants. I had to really look at who I was as a person because you're putting yourself on the stage to be judged, right?
Yeah.
as a kid and a teenager, those are like really hard years where you're trying
That's
to find
heavy.
yourself.
Yeah. Especially for a teenager who's like so like wanting to fit in and be accepted and all of that.
And then you put yourself on a stage literally to get a number, like, okay, I'll give her a 5, you know, just because of why, the way I walked, like, what was it, you know? So I had to do a lot of self-discovery pretty early on to know who I was. And I think the when I really started to understand my purpose was in college. So my name is Hope, right? And that's kind of heavy because people, you know, they meet you and then they're expecting you to be this like light for them, right? Your name's Hope, right? You're supposed to do that. And that was like really hard for me. But I remember my mom said to me when I left for college, she was like, you know, I named you Hope for me because she had went through some tough times right before I was born. So she said, I named you Hope for me, and now you're for everyone else. And, you know, I think that's when I really started to realize, I always knew, like I said, I had impact and influence and all those things, but I started to realize that my life was supposed to be a blueprint and an example for other people. So I had to continue to strive for things that were a little outside of the box. I try and listen to myself and my intuition as much as I can, because I believe that our souls come here already full of purpose and meaning. And then you just spend your life trying to tap into it, you know?
Actualize that.
Yes. Yes. So I listen to things that make me feel good. I try to not do things that don't make me feel good. And then I keep people around me that push me to do those things. So I think that, you know, for me, when I really started to understand my purpose was around college. And I tried to fight it as much as possible. I definitely tried to just hide under a rock and not really live into it. But like I said, your soul, like when you fight your purpose, like that's when you enter into depression and things like that. So
no,
I really came to it, felt better.
That really speaks to me because I had that same fight, the same struggle when I was in my high school years, where I knew that I was a leader, but I didn't always want to lead.
Right.
I wanted to just sit back, observe, and let someone else like lead sometimes. But I learned quickly that if I didn't lead, then things wouldn't go the best that they could go.
Right.
With my group of friends, like I always needed to be like, all right, guys, here's what we're gonna do. And as soon as I stopped trying to feel as a victim of that leadership responsibility, and I embraced it and says, God put me here to be a leader of people. That's my responsibility. That's my gift. As soon as I embraced it, then my whole life started to change. Then I started to my trajectory just took off. And so it really was just like owning my purpose, owning that responsibility and that gift. And like you said, it just really changes everything for you in life after that happens.
Totally.
What's your greatest fear with all that said?
You know, I'm afraid of a lot of little things. If you ask my boyfriend, he thinks I'm afraid of everything.
Heights.
I'm a little afraid of
walks.
I'm like, fun fact about me, funny fact, I probably shouldn't tell because it's embarrassing, but I'm like a little afraid of escalators. I know.
Or like the shoestring getting caught and like.
I don't know what it is. Like, I'm just triggered by escalators. I have to hold on and I gotta like look at gotta see. And I really prefer like my boyfriend to stand in front of me just in case. But I'd say serious. My greatest fear is just not being, you know, who everyone wants me to be. And I know that's at the end of the day, like it's more of who people need me to be than who they want me to be. But I just really hate disappointing people. You know, there's some people who don't care about that. And then there are other people who care about it too much. I'm probably more on the side of caring about it too much. I don't like disappointing people, especially people that I love and that love me. And people that pour into me. I really hate that and feeling like I just, that I failed at something. So yeah, and that's probably comes with just like imposter syndrome and doubt of yourself. And, you know, I have to constantly do work on confidence and all these things that people probably don't think that, you know, I meet people all the time and they're like, oh, you know, they think they put me on this pedestal. I'm like,
you got a blue check. How you got imposter
right, you
syndrome?
got a blue check. That means you made it, right? No, I still have the same fears and I still doubt myself. I still have to look myself in the mirror and tell myself like, you got this. Like I still
Yeah.
have to do all those things too. So
Yeah. No, we talk about that in our course too, the Legacy Accelerator. One thing after I've done research about imposter syndrome, because I've had it too, and they say it comes from, accelerated success or some type of survivor's remorse. But what I've really found is like our history and heritage being stripped away from us during the era of slavery and beyond has has hindered us from our sense of belonging. It has hindered us from some of our sense of identity. And when we start to go back and build out our family trees or create or get our genealogy test done, you say, okay, oh, my roots are from Nigeria. My roots are from Congo. Then you say, okay, I have a nationality there. Now I can connect to that. Then when you go a little bit more granular and say like, let me build my family tree and learn about my grandparents and their parents and my great grandparents, and you start hearing stories. I learned that like my second or third great grandfather was born in 1826. He was born a slave in Maryland. He bought his own freedom for $1,000 at age 21, and he went on to like own like multiple real estate properties and had an estate worth like $50,000 when he died. So he 50x his basically worth from his time he was born to the time he died. And I'm like, yo, that's me.
yeah,
Like that's an entrepreneur. Like now I see why I work the way I work.
yeah.
And I didn't feel like an imposter no more. I felt like, like this is
This
what
is
I'm
who
meant to do.
it's in my blood.
Mm,
Yeah. I think that that's so true. And I never thought about it that way. Cause even with me, so you see, I'm very fair skinned, right? My mother is as well. She has blue eyes. And I remember growing up, people would say to me like, oh, I didn't know you were Black.
mm,
Or just, yeah, I definitely got that, especially when I would travel to different places doing pageants and stuff. I just would meet a lot of people that like weren't used to seeing a lot of Black people.
mhm.
And especially
Ignorant.
not like very fair skinned Black people or Black people with blue eyes or anything like that. So my mom and I always make the joke, like when people ask like, oh, wow, how'd you get so light skinned? We'd be like slavery. I mean, because it's not really a joke.
Right.
Right. But we would talk about like how the buck stops there. We really don't know who we are. We really don't know where we come from. And you're right. I feel like if you knew, and I think that's the difference in a lot of white households, right? So I remember when I got into investment banking, there were a lot of kids there that were like legacy, their dads
Yeah.
were investment bankers and their dad. So they learned all this stuff from a really young age and they felt so confident in it. Where I remember walking into JP Morgan as a sophomore being like just so confused and devastated at like how the lack of knowledge that I had around what was going on. And
Mhm.
I was terrified.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I've been building models since I was 10, but like when you have that, like you said, when you have that history and you know the legacy of your family, like that definitely gives you an extra layer of confidence. So it is exciting that we, now there's a movement to learn your lineage and learn your history.
Yeah. Well, tap into the Legacy Accelerator course, all of you listening, and you will definitely be able to kind of eliminate that imposter syndrome through our course.
Yeah.
So I love that we could talk about that topic. And kind of to wrap it, I want to ask two questions. One, I imagine that everyone has a dream or a vision, but what would you say separates people who make those dreams a reality and the people who don't?
Hmm. Um, I'd say the biggest differentiator from those who do and those who don't is definitely confidence. I
Mm,
think it's all about confidence. Confidence is what holds me back the most, and it's also what propels me and allows me to take the risks that I do.
mm,
Um, Getting into the cannabis industry was a risk. I left the investment banking industry. And if anyone who understands that industry, that's something that you have to work your way up a ladder. There's no way to like penetrate it.
mm,
So once I left my entry level position, there was no turning back, so I knew that.
yeah.
And I took a chance on this, but I felt confident in it and I felt assured. I was listening to my inner self. I was listening to what felt right. I think that if you just take the first leap and you stop worrying about, step 8, 9, 10, and you just worry about step 1. And then once you conquer that, worry about step 2. If you take it, just day by day, you can get to where you want to be. You have to just start though. And you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that the knowledge you need is out there, even if you don't have it yet. That the mentors that you need are out there, even if you don't have direct contact with them. You have to really just take that leap of faith and have hope. And I'm not saying that just because it's so awkward for me to say my name in sentences sometimes, but really you do have to have that faith that, someone will be there to catch you if you fall, but likely you won't.
Yeah, it's going to be you versus you.
Yes, definitely.
In the end. Listen, this was an amazing interview. And I'm so glad that we could finally connect. We were supposed to connect on the Google platform like right before COVID, but COVID happened. And so here we are. I'm glad we can connect virtually. And I'm looking forward to outside opening back up where we can have our annual conference and maybe bring you back as a speaker in the future.
I would love that.
Well, let everyone know how they can find you online and what you have coming up.
Definitely. So you can follow me on Instagram. I'm probably the most active there. So my Instagram is I am Hope So Dope. If you just type in Hope Wiseman, I'll probably pop up as well. You can follow my business at Mary in Maine, and definitely be following us over the next few months. We have a lot of really exciting things happening and announcements. And you can find us on every social platform at Mary, ANDMAIN. And yeah, I'm so excited about the future, the future of the cannabis industry, the future of just my business and my family. I'm really excited to share that with everyone.
Can we order online from Mary in Maine?
So if you have a medical card in Maryland, you can order online. Adult use is probably coming to Maryland in the next year or two. So, things will really open up and it'll be a more normalized industry, kind of like California is. It's going to be exciting, like the way the world looks at cannabis, weed, marijuana, whatever you call it, is actively changing. So I'm really excited to be pioneering what that looks like, at least in Maryland.
Absolutely. Two things I'm really excited about is the cannabis industry and cryptocurrency. I feel like those two things are so unique and new and going to grow exponentially over the next 5 to 10 years. So keep an eye on those two things, especially the cannabis industry. If you guys want to connect with me, I'm at one Johnny Bailey on Instagram, LinkedIn. Also connect with the ShineHard family at ShineHard family, shinehardfamily.org. Again, we have our Legacy Accelerator course that is now open. 8-week course that will help you discover the wealth that you already possess. We'll cover legacy, we'll cover affairs, we'll cover information, investing, economics, really a very comprehensive approach to building wealth for yourself and your family. Look forward to continually adding value through these type of conversations. Hope, thank you so much for being here with us and continue to shine. We are the leaders of right now. Peace.